This is Raven Data, and welcome to Walking Between the Worlds. Thank you for tuning in today. It is Wednesday, March 1st, and we're going to go through some information on Class 3 of Spirit Animals today. I just want to talk a little bit about the connection in general. One of the main reasons why I decided to take on this class is to impress upon you that in the very same way we are all connected as humans to each other in the deep part of our awareness. We're connected nervous system to nervous system, even across distances. We are connected to each other in the deep unconscious, which is why we can share dreams, which is why we can pick up each other's thoughts and moods even over a distance. So in a similar way, in an energetic way, I'll say it that way, when we think of trees in the forest and how deeply their roots go and how the mycelium acts as a medium of connection so that trees communicate with each other constantly, we also have levels of connection, energetic connection. So in that space between worlds, we are deeply connected with other human beings and share a human experience. And what we forget is that because we are animals, we also share those deep connections with the animal kingdom and with all species of animals and plants, but that's another class. So what I want you to get when we talk about spirit animals and totem animals and power animals is that we are in constant communication with the animal kingdom, and animals are in constant communication with us as well. So when we see an animal, or if one shows up in our dreams, or we feel particularly drawn to one, or even repelled by one, there is a message there. There's something there. It's not as random as it may seem. I mean, sure, you might see a squirrel and think it's random. If you see 20 squirrels in the same week, you want to pay attention. If you see one lone bird on the wire and it's looking at you and talking to you, there's probably something going on there, right? So I just want you to notice that in the world at large, when we are connected in the way that we are, that the more we're able to stop and notice those connections, the more information and communication we're able to experience. So again, you know, in the most basic way, what we call magic is the movement of energy and information from the unseen to the seen worlds. And animals in themselves, when they show up for us, they're often transferring energy from the unseen, instinctive, intuitive, deep realms of the worlds, between the worlds, into our reality, so that if we have the eyes to see it, we will. If we are quiet in our minds and let the information come to us, it can. So I just want you to play with that information, because again, even though I'm going to give you some a little bit of direction and some history about different animals, and today it's mostly birds, but I want you to be free in your interpretations when you take on the study and practice for yourself. I don't want you to get hung up in what somebody else says or somebody else writes or what they say something means, because it could be different for you than it is for somebody else. And of course, different cultures also have their connections to certain kinds of animals, and they honor certain animals, and they have certain interpretations of those animals' powers. So I just want you to look at that, all of it, the bigger spectrum, when you play with these ideas. Okay, so today we're going to talk primarily about birds. And there's so many birds. When I got started on this class, taking notes and looking things up, I could have, this class could be 2 hours long, but I'm not going to do that to you. So I'm going to hit some of the major birds and give you some general directions about looking at birds in your life, and I think that will suffice. Let's start with the owl. Some people love owls, some people fear owls. There's a lot of different kinds. They are all throughout myth and magic. You see Harry Potter owls. There's a white owl, there's a barn owl, there's the barred owl, there's a hoot owl, there's the horned owl, there's the big gray owl. Owls can be very, very small, and they can be quite large. They are unique, though, in the bird kingdom. They're very unique. They're silent, and they have an incredible ability to find their prey in the darkest of night. So, with its piercing gaze and silent flight, animals like the owl generally have a symbolic representation of being messengers between the worlds. Owls, of course, are also known for wisdom, for knowledge, for guiding us, and particularly when owls show up for us, it has something generally to do with guidance through the dark, or being able to not just see in the dark, but not to fear the dark, that they're guides of the darkness. Owls sometimes will represent the passing of someone, that in some cultures and in some families, when an owl arrives, it means there's going to be a transformation, perhaps a death, perhaps a birth. But in certain cultures, owls are dark omens, so they're omens for misfortune about to occur. So again, you don't have to buy into any of this. Just know it and pay attention to how you feel if and when you have experiences or dreams with owls. Now, I also know a couple of shaman who use an owl feather or an owl wing to journey, to travel, to place across their forehead, their face, and close their eyes and go take a journey out of body and soar up over the land and see what they can see. So again, a journey not so much in a meditative journey, but in an astral body travel kind of journey. So particularly owls are known for their ability to allow us humans to journey with them with the wings of the owl and the sight of an owl. So it's interesting, it's fascinating. Owls are said to travel to the land of the gods and to the land of the dead. Barn owls are extraordinarily sensitive to sound. They have the ability to locate prey by sound alone, better than any animal ever tested. With a wingspan stretching up to 5 feet, the gray owl is one of the largest owls found in the United States. And owls can spot their prey at distances up to a half-mile away. It's remarkable. Messengers, transformation, clear-sightedness, seeing through deception, that's part of their powers, their wisdom powers, seeing through deception. Great change, navigating the darkness with ease, travel between the worlds. And also, sometimes the message is, when necessary, when needed, be the silent predator, be the owl, be the one who sees through the darkness and does what needs to be done. I'm going to read you something really fascinating about owls. The owl is a living radio telescope with sonic discs surrounding the eyes that are made of feathers that funnel the sound directly into their high-range ears. Unlike most birds of prey, the owl's satellite dish eyes are forward-facing and extra large for their head size, giving them binocular vision. One ear is situated higher than the other, which in their auditory asymmetry, along with their ability to pivot their neck 220 degrees, allows the owl to pinpoint the exact location of a sound without moving their body. By turning her head slightly until the sound is heard in both ears, the owl then knows she is staring straight at the origin of the sound, her prey. Once positioned, her large nocturnal eyes are then able to locate even a tiny object in the pitch dark with minimal use of energy. Her flight feathers are also fringed with a layer of fur, which makes her gliding approach completely silent. Her fierce vision and hearing, along with her silent cloak of feathers and razor-sharp talons, makes the owl a master of the night and a fierce hunter. Okay. Also, you may or may not know that owls are also often connected with UFO experiences. So if you want more information on that, I would recommend a book to you. It's called Messengers. It's about those connections, how owls and sightings and contact occur often at the same time. The author is Mike Cleland. It's like Cleveland without the V. It's Cleeland, Mike Cleland. Okay, so that's quite a bit about owls. The next bird I want to talk a bit about today is also one that, this bird gets a bad rap. It's the vulture. And for our purposes, I'm going to talk about the turkey vulture because it's very common throughout the United States. So people often don't like them. They think they're icky, but vultures have been revered throughout history. They do a really, they do a job that serves us very well. They clean up the carrion, right? They eat carrion. So it helps us in disease management. They are tremendously graceful flyers. Don't know if you've ever seen them soaring around in the air. They are often associated with death, but they can, in many places, be symbols of patience, of resourcefulness, and of rebirth. In fact, in Tibet, the vultures are sacred. They have something called a sky burial, where if you wish, your body, instead of being buried or cremated, can be brought up to the mountain and laid out for the vultures. And it's said that when the birds eat your flesh, they take a bit of your soul with them up into the sky, making your passage to the heavens easier. I think it's fascinating. Vultures also, I think you've probably seen them when you read or study anything about Egypt, because they're definitely part of the lore of Egypt and are often seen on headpieces. So that in that culture, the vulture represents protection and reincarnation and life after death. The vultures don't prey on living animals, and instead they eat the body of the dead. So they're considered to be sacred, and they're considered to be the protectors of humans and the cleaners of the land. Vultures in Egypt, though, we go back to that, they are sacred to the goddess Isis. They were even raised to the rank of deity. The goddess is Nekhbet, the protector of Upper Egypt, and it is the pharaoh who is often depicted wearing a vulture-headed headdress. She's the symbol of femininity and maternal protection. And it is in Tibet, I said it wrong before, it is in Tibet where she is associated with reincarnation and life after death. So I don't know if you've ever watched vultures, but they're very, very interesting birds. And I had the great good fortune, the last place I lived, the vultures would come and nest in the, not nest, but they would land in the trees right behind the place I lived. So I would see 3, 4, 5 of them sitting in the trees at once. And I always went out and watched the vultures. I have an affinity for them. In fact, if I'm going on a walk by the lake and there's a vulture, and there are many vultures, we have lots of vultures here in the summer, and then they travel south, they actually go to Florida for the winter, like some people I know. But it's very common for me when I'm out walking that if I see a vulture and I stop and I stand still and I look up and I, in my mind, will greet the vulture, that it will fly directly over me. Sometimes it's actually come down and gone within 15, 20 feet over me. I don't think it thinks I'm dead. I think it is aware that I'm greeting it. When I lived in the last place I lived, where all the vultures congregated in the back, there was one time in the fall where I happened to be out at just the right time, and there were, I don't know, 40, 50, there were so many vultures, and they were crisscrossing in the sky over my head. They were flying and flying and flying and crisscrossing, and then all of a sudden, as if on cue, they all turned in the same direction and they flew off. And I subsequently figured out I witnessed their leaving dance, right? We're migrating. But they did this beautiful and elaborate sky dance before they turned and flew away. And I was lucky enough to walk through the area and collect a handful of vulture feathers, beautiful long vulture feathers, which I now have on one of my little altar spaces where I keep Hecate, the goddess. The statue of the goddess Hecate lives on my space where I keep my vulture feathers. So vultures, energetically speaking, can also represent leaving the past in the past, right? Eating or metabolizing, right? Getting rid of that which is dead. So I just want you to kind of lean into that a little bit, that even if you have an ick factor for vultures, you might consider the job that they do. And if they show up in your life, if you see them, it might be a memo from you to you about letting go of something, putting something in the past, metabolizing something rather than carrying the dead thing around, right? Because the dead thing stinks and it can make you sick. So I think it's fascinating because it's more than a metaphor. Even if what we're doing is carrying the dead thing around energetically, it's still, not the smartest thing to do. So if you have a tendency toward that, you might do a little leaning into the vulture energy and ask for a little bit of that power, a little bit of that ability to metabolize the dead thing and release it from your life. I've also had the good fortune of having vultures fly over my car and poop all over my car. Well, that's an experience. So yes, they're large birds. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, cardinals. A lot of people have an affinity for cardinals because they're red, because they show up in the winter, because they're beautiful. And many people that I know relate to cardinals they say that in the passage of their loved ones, that they often will see a cardinal show up after the fact, and they believe it's to let them know that their loved one is okay. That's not my experience of cardinals, but I do love them, and I have quite a few of them around my place. But it's common. I know three different people who have that particular association with cardinals. So they are often considered to be messengers for the dead, showing their vitality, the vitality of the dead as they live on in the next world, and reminding us of the vibrant life that they do still have. Cardinals also can represent perseverance, life surviving death, and resilience in the winter, as you see them red against the snow and red against the stark green of the pine. So they are they're a hardy bird, and they know how to survive. Sparrows. I really enjoy sparrows. I had a sparrow once. My neighbor had a tree cut down, and there was a nest, and there was a sparrow in that nest that she brought to me, and I hand-fed it, and I raised it, and I named it Johnson because when it flew, it sounded like a little motor. The name of a boat motor, it's the Johnson motor. And I had that bird for quite some time, and I loved that bird. And it was a tiny little sparrow, and it would fly around the house and land on my head. It never pooped on my head, I'm glad to say, but it would land on my head and kind of root around and nest in my hair. And I learned a lot raising that little bird. Anyway, sparrows. My association or affiliation with a sparrow is that taking care of the details. If I take care of the details in my life, then things move forward and they change. And at that particular time in my life, I was ignoring some things, and taking care of that bird actually slowed me down enough, especially when I was up feeding it in the middle of the night, slowed me down enough to think about things I had been sleeping under the rug, and it did me a great service. And this was before I had any idea that cardinals actually had something to do with paying attention to the details in your life. So they're small but mighty. They're feisty. Don't ignore the details. Sparrows are very social and they know how to work together. Joy in common things is one of the messages that are associated with sparrows. And humility, that's another one. So if sparrows cross your path, or you particularly like sparrows, again, you might take a look at the details in your life and see if you might be sweeping something under the rug that they're calling your attention to. And since we're talking about sparrows, I'm going to talk more about hawks later, but the sparrow hawk is a very unique hawk. So one of the natural predators to the sparrow, right, is the sparrow hawk. They're small hawks, but they're about a little bit bigger maybe than a blue jay, but they have this very unique skill where when they fly, they can fly very quickly and they can turn. You know, like you see in the movies, the spaceships turn on their side and get through a tight space. These birds can do that. They can see a sparrow, say, in a bush, and they can fly full-on speed straight at the bush, turn sideways at the last second, go through the bush, snag that sparrow, and keep on going. They are fierce little hunters. And I never even knew they existed until I, for a while, stayed at a place called Sparrowhawk Ranch, which it isn't a ranch, but Sparrowhawk was the name of the place. And I thought, well, why in heaven's name would somebody name something Sparrowhawk? And I looked them up and I went, wow, these are fascinating little critters, right? So sparrowhawks are special in what their skill in navigating is, to get through tight spots, to get through what seem to be impossible spots. So that's a special power or talent of the sparrowhawk. Okay, ravens and crows. So I'm going to talk about them together because they share a lot of things in common in myth and in history. Of course, you can tell them apart pretty easily. Ravens are bigger, quite a bit bigger than crows. And in their throat area, they're furrier, they're hairy. And their sound is different. You know, a crow will caw. Caw, caw, right? That's a crow. But a raven will croak. It's more a croak. Both birds are known for their extreme intelligence. Again, their ability to recognize faces, their ability to pick up words, their ability to use tools. So they're absolutely amazing birds. They're a part of the corvid family, like blue jays are also part of that family. Change, transformation, magic. They're said to live between the worlds and to guide the souls of the dead from one side to the other. So both when people die, to guide them to the other side, and when souls are visiting, to guide them across to our side of the veil. So again, in some cultures, both ravens and crows are seen as negative or omens of death or omens of bad magic or ill intent, and it is certainly not necessarily the case. Many cultures see them as the ones who carry the magic from the gods, the ones who bring information. In fact, again, in mythology, there is Odin, the god, who traded one of his eyes for knowledge and who is able to see the world and all the events in the world through his two ravens, who were named Thought and Memory. So they are considered to be, they have the ability to bring back specific information that you're looking for by seeking it out and bringing the information back to you. Not just between worlds, but in this world. So ravens and crows can deliver messages from to and from other humans and to and from the land of the dead as well. There are also many tribes in the American Southwest see the raven as a protector and as a sacred being, even for the ghost dance. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you? There's so much. Well, I'm going to tell you a story about my name, because my name is Raven, obviously. But it wasn't always Raven. I was born Robin. And I was never much like a robin, the little cute little harbinger of spring. I was always more like a raven than a robin. My grandfather, at some point in his life that I don't remember, but my grandfather had a pet crow, and he would feed the crows and the ravens. So he was very fond of and familiar with crows and ravens, and how smart they are, how intelligent they are, and the tricks they used to play. He'd say how they would go on because he fed them, that hang around the place, and that they'd go up on the clothesline and they'd pull the pegs off the clothesline and drop the clothes on the ground until he came out and fed them, right? So from an early age, I didn't particularly associate with the name Robin. And in fact, even when I got to college, people generally called me Bird or the Bird, right? The Bird. And when I wrote articles and things like that, as I got older, I always used the pen name Raven. Now, there was a point in my life where I decided to legally change my name. And so not only was I going to change my first name, but I was getting divorced at the time, so I also decided to change my last name to my own name, not to go back to my birth name, which was Robertson, but to choose my name. So I chose the name Dana, even though the book that I was looking at to see what the name meant was not in the library. It happened to be out. So I decided to change my name anyway. And between the time I made the decision and the time I actually changed my name, all kinds of synchronicities occurred. I had dreams in which I was in this house, and later that week, somebody came and said, "Hey, there's this restaurant that just opened down the street, and they just converted this old house." And I went, "Oh, all right, sure, let's go there." Well, the name of the restaurant was the Raven's Nest, and the house was the house from my dream. Okay, that's one of many things that happened. Well, the biggest thing that happened, though, in the change of my name is that I had another dream in which there was a man in the closet playing a bagpipe who said he was a relative of mine, had me look at the tartan that he wore very closely because it did not look like the Robertson tartan that I was familiar with. And he said that your name change will bring you in alignment with your lineage. Okay, I didn't understand that. And I couldn't find the name Dana anywhere, the last surname Dana. Long story short, I go ahead and change my name, and then I'm in the library looking for something else, and somebody, old librarian, said, "Hey, that book came back in," and I look up all the different aspects of Dana, only to find that it's from D-A-N-A-A-N, Dana, and very long story short, the goddess who appears to her people in the form of ravens. So Raven Dana comes from Old Celtic, the Dana part of it, the Tuatha De Danann, which is not how it's pronounced, but it's from the people of the Dana, the goddess Dana. By the way, even the Danube River is named after Dana. So the connection between Dana and Raven, I had absolutely no idea that it was there. But to be part of that goddess energy who appears in the form of ravens was absolutely magic to me at the time. So that's the story of my name change. And also I did eventually find the tartan, and it was in fact part of the Robertson tartan, but it was part of the war tartan. When they went to fight, it was a completely different tartan, and that's the one I saw. All right, so ravens and crows and ravens, messengers between the worlds, guardians of the gates between the worlds. You'll often find a crow or a raven as the guardian or the gatekeeper at a passage between worlds. So if you're dreaming and you see a crow or raven, they might be watching you to bring information back to somebody else, or they might be there as your messenger to see if you would like them to go gather some information for you. So lots of different things with crows and ravens. All right, chickens. People, again, they say, don't be chicken. Have you ever seen a chicken? Do you know chickens? My daughter has chickens. Let me tell you, they are fierce little buggers. Chickens are remarkable little animals. In fact, if you ever doubt that the birds on our planet are direct descendants of dinosaurs, just take a close look at the chicken. Well, you know, you can look at the big birds too, like the emu and the ostrich. They're very dinosaur-like, but man, chickens are fierce. And again, they work really well in a flock. They'll peck somebody right out of the hen house. They're not so great on their own, right? They're social animals. And so chickens have a lot to do with cooperation and nurturing and the maternal instinct. And again, we eat their eggs, we eat their flesh. They eat the bugs in the yard, you know, when we're not having them penned up, feeding them, feed. But chickens are awesome little animals, and they also really like humans. If you raise chickens like my daughter did, then even as grown chickens that are in the coop laying eggs, when we go in to feed them, they want to be touched. Some of them like to be cuddled. They want to fly up and sit on your shoulder. They are quite amazing little animals. So I just want you to get that whole conversation about being chicken is no. If you're going to be chicken, you're going to go peck somebody's eyes out if they're a threat to you, which is not a bad thing, right? So this sort of unassuming but fierce protective presence. I like that about chickens, so feel free to borrow that. All right, doves. People love doves. Morning doves, white doves. Some people even like pigeons. I like pigeons. The neighborhood I grew up in Yonkers, there were people who had homing pigeons, and I loved to go up on the roof and watch those pigeons fly their figure eight in the evening light before they went into their coop for the night. In fact, there was a pigeon or two that used to come regularly and land on the roof. They'd fly out of formation and come land on the roof, and I would feed them. You're not supposed to do that, but I'd do it anyway. And so doves, pigeons, mourning doves. You know, the mourning doves are the ones that you hear that almost sound like owls. They're kind of grayish and tan. But whatever kind of dove you've got, most people relate to doves as symbols of hope, as symbols of smooth times ahead, as symbols of love, as symbols of moving on and regeneration. Doves are associated with peace and goodwill and kindness and love. Now, having said all that, I have a funny but creepy dove story for you. So my dad, as you may know, was a mortician. So in the funeral home, there would be lots of fascinating stories that would come back after a service. And this is a story that took place at a gravesite. So my dad was the funeral director, and the person that was being buried was a very, very elderly Italian man. And no, there weren't very many people at the gravesite, at the family, that spoke English. So they gave the dove that was to be released over the gravesite after the blessing was given to this 10-year-old boy, because he was one of the few that could speak English. So the boy's holding the dove. My father's watching the boy to give him the signal to go ahead. And the priest, instead of giving the blessing and getting on with life, was going on and on and on. Well, the dove is squirming. The boy is holding the dove tighter. The dove is squirming. He wants to let it go. My father's shaking his head no. Eventually, the priest stops talking. By now, the dove is not doing very well. The little boy throws the dove up to release the dove, but he has accidentally killed the dove. And instead of being released, everybody's head goes up. And then the dove goes down, plop, on top of the casket in the hole. Well, the dead man's wife, who does not understand why this is, in her broken English, I know I said it was a funny story, and it is, she jumps down on the casket and she starts punching it with her fist saying, "You summon a bitch, you cheat on me." So she made it mean that the dove died instead of flying away meant that he was a bad man and he wasn't going to heaven. So much for the dove being peace and hope and love. Okay. Moving on. Eagles. Eagles are fascinating raptors, right? Power, speed, energy, focus, regeneration. They are tremendously agile. The very first poem I ever learned was The Eagle by Alfred Lloyd Tennyson. Just came back into my mind. He clasped the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lonely lands, ringed by the azure world he stands. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, then, like a thunderbolt, he falls. That was my first thought about what an eagle was. And I carried that poem with me, well, all these years. It was the first poem I taught my daughter when she was small. Because that image was just remarkable to me. And now that, I've seen some eagles flying here, especially, we have eagles and we have ospreys, and they're stunning birds. But they're known as spirit animals and as totem animals for vigilance, for awareness, for being keen-sighted, for being quick, for being agile, for being able to change things up at a moment's notice to get done what they need done. Falcons, hawks, and eagles, I'm going to talk about them, kind of interchangeably a little bit. They're all birds of prey. They're all raptors. Eagles and hawks belong to the same family. And while falcons are not in the same family, they still have many shared traits, powers, and characteristics. In fact, the peregrine falcon is the fastest bird in the sky. It has been clocked as fast as 240 miles an hour, which I think is remarkable. And this is not when it's flying straight, but when it's dive bombing to get something. That's the fastest that it's ever been clocked. But the average, they have looked at average speeds for that dive bombing process, and it runs at around 185 miles an hour, which, again, is, to me, terrifyingly fast for closing your wings and plummeting through the sky to get your prey. So these birds are all considered to be divine messengers, carrying your wishes, your prayers to the heavens, to the deities, and returning with answers, with power, with energy, with grace. When you have a hawk sighting, in many, many cultures, it's a message from the spirit realm that you're ready to take on something larger, that you're ready to face something, to take something on, that you are looking for a time coming up to expand, to have a more powerful vision of yourself, to be more powerful in the world you inhabit. So you can see all of the raptors in pretty much the same light, for clear-sightedness, for swiftness, for the ability to change direction quickly, and to be able to carry your desires into the between worlds, which again, it's a wonderful thing to play around with that thought. I have seen quite a few hawks, and to me, at different times, they mean different things. So I don't have one thing that any of these things mean. When I see a bird, I check out how I feel in that moment. What might you be telling me is my thought. What are you telling me? I've seen hawks where they're a confirmation of something. I'm thinking, I'm working through something. Should I do A or B? Or should I do X? And if I make the decision, okay, I'm going to do X, and then I see a hawk, that's my confirmation. Okay, I'm right on the money. I'm good with that. The hawk says yes. I've also seen hawks and falcons in situations where it's a warning, where a hawk will come by and then it'll come again, or a falcon will fly over again and again and again. And I think, there's something coming. I need to pay attention here. And that's also accurate. So again, think more in terms of messengers. And in that moment, like just like when somebody comes to the door, right? If they come to the door and knock, knock, hello, I'm here, it's a completely different message than boom, boom, boom. Yeah? So what I want you to think of is that in the moment when you see an animal or dream of an animal or have this sense of an animal, that you have within you the ability to feel more about what that memo is, what it means for you. Is this animal lending its power to you? Is it offering to take a memo somewhere? Is it showing you what you might need to be doing a little bit differently? Is it reminding you of something? Is it giving you a direction? Because in the same way that we as humans are all interconnected, and the way we share information and energy, so do we share that same way with the animals in our surroundings. So I just want you to take that with you today. It's a way to process moving forward with your ability to know spirit animals and to share on a deeper level with the energies of the animal kingdom. We could go on and on and on. I want to talk next week about some of the animals that are a little off to center, right? What if we are attracted to animals that quote unquote don't exist? What if we have griffins and dragons and gargoyles as part of the things that show up for us? What if we have insects? What if we have bees and butterflies? What if we have, right, praying mantis? That's another common animal, creature that shows up as a totem or a spirit animal. So we're gonna talk about some of that next time, and we're gonna talk also a little bit more about we did the air, up in the air today, birds, and I think probably most of us have had flying dreams. If you haven't had flying dreams, I would recommend that you sit quietly and do a meditation or a journey in which you allow yourself to experience what it might be like to fly. So the meditation that I give that goes with this class will have some flying in it. But more than that, I would like you to pick a bird that works for you. Doesn't matter what bird it is, whatever works for you. I didn't talk about swans today, but they're another very, very common totem animal that people love, that are, the ugly duckling that turns into the swan, and all the stories about swans. So again, there's just not enough time on the planet for me to cover every animal. But I also have an affinity for swans and have since I was a little girl. So if that's something that's on your radar, then perhaps you would like to try the flight of a swan, or the flight of a peregrine falcon, or the flight of a blue heron. Blue herons are also remarkable birds. They're known for their patience, their stillness, and their ability to wait to exactly the right moment and then dive for that fish. So when a blue heron comes onto I for a very long time would take my lake walk, and no matter what time I took it, there would be a blue heron that would be sailing the lake shore. And I thought it was fascinating. And I later discovered that one of the totem meanings of the blue heron was perfect timing, was doing something quickly at exactly the right time and not putting it off. And I actually had an opportunity. I was looking to move the place I told you about before, and that's how I came to live in the house I'm in now, is that an opportunity arose, and I had been seeing this blue heron over and over and over and over and over again. And when the opportunity arose and somebody came to show me this house, as I came onto the property, there was, at the end of the street, there's a sign that happens to have a blue heron on it. And I thought, oh. And if I hadn't acted that day and said yes, I can tell you that I wouldn't be here, because that's how quickly it happened. So the blue heron, again, is special to me, and gave me a memo that I was lucky enough to actually get, which is why I live where I live today. So yeah, blue herons are remarkable, and they're beautiful, and they're quite large. There are some animals, some birds, that have enormous, up to an 11-foot wingspan. The condors have very, very large wingspans. I think, I don't know, maybe it's because my name's Raven, but all these birds are now coming to my mind. One of my favorite birds to look at, I think they're incredible, is the harpy eagle. If you've never seen a harpy eagle, by all means look it up. It looks like it can't possibly exist. It's an amazing looking creature. And anyway, have fun with this, play. So I'd like you to, as your experience today, I'd like you to practice flying. I'd like you to take yourself out also and look at the birds at different times of day. They do things in the morning. They do things at sun. They love to play at sundown. So I would like you to familiarize yourself a bit with the birds in your particular neighborhood and see what's normally around. That way you also have a clue if there's a bird suddenly that shows up for you that's not normally around. Oh, this might be an extra added memo for you. This might be something for you to pay attention to. And by all means, if there's a bird that you're particularly attracted to, look that bird up and see how it speaks to you. And you might go out and get yourself a little totem bird. So another assignment, something that I'd like you to do this week around. I know that you did, I imagine that you did your totem pole exercise, that you developed it a little bit more. And you might pick an animal or two from your list and go get yourself either a stuffed animal or a sculpture or a ceramic animal or a little plastic animal, something that speaks to you that you can keep with you or put on your desk as a reminder of that energy, as a reminder of that exchange, as a reminder that you too are an animal, and that insight and instinct and intuition are critically important. We put so much emphasis on intelligence, meaning intellect, and it's not true. Intelligence is much more than intellect. In fact, intellect by itself is blind, because intellect actually is shaped by our beliefs and expectations. But when we allow ourselves to be the sacred animals that we are, then our intuition and our instinct will balance our intellect, and we'll have real intelligence. We'll have true intelligence. So I think that particularly playing with these ideas and becoming more aware of our totem animals and our power animals and our spirit animals, it gives us an opportunity to stretch our wings, metaphorically speaking, in the realm of recultivating, redeveloping our own instinct and intuition, to slow our minds down, to get our minds out of the way some, so we can pay attention to the instinct and the intuition that as animals we have in abundance but often ignore. So it can serve us greatly. It can even save our lives on occasion. So I'm leaving you with that thought today, to fly high and to allow your animal nature to rise to the surface and to inform you in new ways. So feel free this week to explore being an animal, to move like a giraffe, to lumber like an elephant, to fly like an eagle, to scurry like a mouse. Have some time to play. Have a wonderful week, and I'll be back later on this evening, and I'll put up a meditation for you. Thank you so much for tuning in this time. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to talk to me. You can even email me, raven@stresswizardcoach. Oh, I'm going to give you an easier one. You can email me, ravendana55@gmail.com. Much easier. ravendana55 ravenDana@gmail.com. Email me there with any questions that you may have, and I'll be happy to chat. All right, have a wonderful week, and thank you for tuning in. May the animals be with you. Good night now. This is Raven Dana, and I'm going to go fly with the birds.